Hi there guys, Bizzleberry here, support main. If you don't know who I am, I make a lot of YouTube and Twitch content. I make guides on Mobify as well. If you are unfamiliar with my content, I do coaching and supporting. There's some support coaching videos on my YouTube channel. I do guides, I do patch videos like this one, and I do gameplay videos from my support games and the occasional off-roll game onto my YouTube channel. Now, getting into patch 8.15, hopefully you can use some of these champions as references on what you decide to pick and or maybe ban in solo queue. This should give you an idea of what the meta is looking at right now. So before we go into the champion selections in themselves, you can quickly have a browse through while I'm picking this. Don't worry about the double mouse and hard pick. It's a little bug with the system that I'm using here right now. But let's talk about the starting items now. The GP5 items have gone up in price from 350 to 400 gold. So what that means is that if you're a person who bought refillable pot, you won't be able to afford it anymore, and you'll be able to only have 2 health potions in lane compared to the usual 3. This means that if you're against a Pyke support, you're going to be taking a lot more harassment, and if you can't sustain that at all, you probably will be a lot more vulnerable in lane, and you may have to consider recalling much sooner than possible. One thing though is that you will be technically 50 gold quicker to your the upgrade tier 2 on the GP5 item. So that's like the Targon's Brace, for example. So generally every time you have to go back, the first back, you should have that upgraded pretty much straight away. There should be almost no excuse to have it not upgraded, since you have saved 50 gold in some way. But this is a buff for sustaining champions and for Pyke champions once again, and indirect enough to tanks. Constantly tanks are having such a hard time. Yeah, it's another indirect tank nerf. So if you are not poking and making making use of the fact that your enemy support only has 2 health potions now, or if you can't sustain through it, you're gonna have a tough time even more in the laning phase now. So it's gonna be bot lane is gonna be even more snowbally. So bring a damage or bring a sustain that bot lane, because that's we're focusing even more now into that area of bot lane right now. So you can see from tier C, you got standard bad pants like Tarek's been nerfed to the ground a couple patches ago, and a couple of picks that I get asked about occasionally, like Shen and Cyan, Zillion, Sona. Those champions are kind of meh. One champion that I do want to particularly mention there is the Brom. Brom is very, very good at very, very specific matchups. So whether you use the Brom Evolution, you're setting yourself on a good start there, or you play him into a combo which I never thought of using Brom for, and actually I played Zyra in this combo, so I got wrecked. Zyra Rakan, Brom counters Zyra Rakan very nicely. Just something to be aware, like the feathers get plumped right in front of the Brom wall. So he is very good in very niche areas of the game. Leona, you can briefly mention, if you play something like a Brand Leona combo bot lane, that is very, very, very strong. So if you have a duo partner, get your AD to play Brand and you play support Leona, and actually that's really, really nice. Kind of another niche is the Lulu with a Cogmore or maybe a Twitch, but that's as far as it goes really. Everyone else is kind of meh, or it's there isn't much reason to pick those champions, and the overwhelming majority of them are tanks. In fact, the only tank I believe that we let's have a quick level scroll up is Thresh. Now, Thresh this patch has received 2 changes, and 2 very good ones actually. The most important one is the Lantern cooldown. It's now been reduced by a fair amount. So Lanterns saving people is gonna be you're going to be, if you're playing against the Thresh, just be constantly thinking even more about that lantern now, because it's going to be coming out way more often. So if you're if you were a Thresh player, give it a go. Give it a go. Coin and laning phase again, because you're a tank and you have no sustain at all, and you're not really poking too much, is brutal. But if you have like an AD or get extra focus from your jungle with your lantern, because lantern jungle ganks can be amazing as long as you know that the enemy jungler isn't nearby for a counter gank. It can be a really solid pick for bot lane. Now the other change he had is the AD increased on his Flay. Now it's just helping at the earlier levels, so I'd still recommend going Q max on Thresh and then maxing E. But he has, I believe it's 100% now ratio on level 1 on his E, whereas before it was 80%. So minor extra damage boost there for Thresh as well. So if you saw one of my Thresh games before, I've uploaded on my YouTube channel this week into a Morgana pick. Actually, it was actually surprisingly pretty damn good. And now he's got extra buffs. There's probably a champion I'm going to be playing a fair amount more now in solo queue. The other picks are pretty standard there as well. Brand and Zyra are pretty common Pokebot lane champion supports to play against. And you have the Fiddlesticks, who did receive minor nerfs to the mana cost on his silence, and also the damage also got slightly reduced as well. So, I mean, in the long run, it's like whoop-de-doo. It's like his main thing is the science anyway, and like the nerfs in general are pretty minor. He's still pretty annoying to play against if he has the aftershock, but he does have his weaknesses as well. He's pretty squishy. If you catch him out super early before he can CC you, then he's done so. Rakan, it's actually technically, it's hard to call him technically a tank because he's actually pretty squishy, but he's in that like melee-ish type of role, even though he isn't really melee. He has always got that really nice ult combo, and he can change fights. And if you've got AoE on your team, then that can follow through, and that's always amazing as well. The Veigar pick I've taken down from tier 1 to tier 2, mainly because his cage is amazing. His damage can be amazing. He's kind of in the same boat as Fiddle. He is by all means very good still. It's just he doesn't bring quite enough without a jungler. Like his cage can be amazing if you get stun off, and that's great, but it's just like you won't have enough damage on yourself to follow up on a cage stun that early into the game pre-6, and it's likely that your AD carry or whatever you have AD probably will not be able to help follow that up. So it works really well if your jungler is working with you. If not, then don't worry too much. You can still make cage plays later on, but you know, Veigar is extremely squishy, and there's so many assassins and so much damage right now that in a blink of an eye you're dead. So positioning is everything, and I'm considering advising people to take CDR boots on Veigar just so his flash is off a little bit more. I'm kind of tempted to investigate like a summoner shard build. Not 100% sure yet. I've got some things working on the back of my head, but if you can prioritize on making your cage the biggest thing on Veigar rather than your damage, eventually the damage will catch up, and for the AP passive scaling it will come with, if you focus on getting cage stuns and getting kills and assists, and adds up with your AP anyway. Would probably still recommend to level Q first though, because otherwise you will be literally doing no damage. But he is still a pick that does particularly well against champions that have nasty dashes, basically. The Morgana has received two nerfs this patch. One direct, one indirect. The direct one is a slap 80 mana reduction. A flat mana cost increased on her Black Shield from 50 to 80. In terms of mana management, it's not too bad. It will mean that you have to think a little bit more when to W, and make sure you only do it during mana flow. When mana flow up, so you're doing it for a mana flow charge, because you don't do W for damage. You do W for GP5 and mana flow stacks. So you're gonna need to think a little bit more about when to W. It's not a game changer, but the other nerf as well is the Hourglass, which does affect Fiddle as well, and that's from 8 minutes to 10 minutes. I'm not fully sure why. Maybe I haven't been paying much attention to the LCS. They could be playing the Hourglass situation more, but generally on like Fiddle and Morgana, you are picking up a Sonya's like 90% of the time. So that talent in itself, reducing the cost and the cooldown, it's pretty big. Well, it's not huge, but it's 8 to 10 minutes. There, that means that you could miss out on that opportunity for that big play, because you're going to be having, you get your ult will be ready for a couple. You won't be able to use the Hourglass ulti for a couple more minutes if that's the kind of like big play that you're looking for, like in an early dragon fight or river fight or something like that. So that is something to still bear in mind. So I think those two affect her just enough to pitch it down a notch, especially now she's only got 2 health potions in the lane. She doesn't really have a sustain. The shield doesn't shield for a lot, and she doesn't poke a great deal, and then she landed Q. So I mean, her black shield is like obviously by far the most amazing thing on her. It's just early game. Her early game has been nerfed slightly, just a tad too much for her to be the best support now, because she was the best support for like 4 or 5 months. She was the only true counter to the tanks when they're strong, and then like she's one of the best safe picks, and she still will be one of the best safe picks still. If you are blind picking into an enemy team called Morgana, it's always going to be pretty strong. And we're going to go to the final. The final tiers, we've got Nami, Lux, Pyke, and Soraka. Now, the Nami and the Soraka are 2 champions that can self-sustain, so they won't be affected quite as much by the 2 pot change in bot lane. Nami has been top contender now for a while, especially with the Athenes on Holy Grail. Their heal on that is literally insane. So if you can get that first item 90% of the time, then that's amazing. Sometimes if you have a hyper carry, you want to go Ardent Censer first if they're doing really well, but otherwise it's like Unholy Grail like 95% of the time. Because you say if you have Unholy stacks charged on you, if you do W to an ally, they get Athene heal, then the W bounces to an enemy, then you've got Athene stacks, and then that heal then bounces to an ally, then they get extra healing from the Athenes again. So it's pretty like effective, and the healing is a lot and will scale as you keep buying Redemption, Ardent Censer, those sort of items as well. So yeah, it's doing that. The hardest thing on Nami, as always, is getting used to bubble, but if you can get consistent using it just as when people's Zonyas are ending and GAs are ending, and getting just practice with her bubble. It's one of the trickier skill shots to land in the game, especially for the dashes that are happening, but it's extremely rewarding if you can get multiple people in that bubble. And her lane's harassment and sustain is pretty decent. Just be careful with your mana slightly, especially early, but as you get more fairy charms, you'll be fine. Soraka, gone from S to S+. She is a poke and self-sustain monster. Like, if you're really good at landing Starfall, then you're going to have such a fun time playing Soraka. Her silence is pretty brutal against a lot of champions. Forces the enemy team to take a couple of grievous wounds as well, if they've been trying to skip that. Generally, she is if you are competent on Soraka, she can be definitely like very, very, very hard to play against in lane. Note though, however, those 2 champions in particular are extremely hard to roam with. The flip side is that Soraka has got the ultimate to affect other lanes as well with her ultimate. But yeah, and Lux can kind of roam with like a ward, a control ward, and a brush, and then do like a binding out. You might get lucky. But Lux is, once again, her sustain comes from her shield, and her shield blocks a very large chunk, to be honest. So that's why she's still in A as an AP support. Plus the catching potential is extremely high, and on top of that, she is a champion that can get Morgana on if required. So many extra bonuses there. If you land Q, E, ulti on a target that's on 100%, it will take them down to 30% HP on any AD carry, which means all you need to do while the enemy is snared is for your AD carry to tap them. And with the amount of damage that's happening on bot lane, it's pretty simple to do. And with champions like Jhin and Draven, and I think Quinn received some nerfs this patch, you might not be seeing as much Quinn, but champions like 30% HP, simple. Pyke, now, because of the health pot change and his passive, he can actually tank if you as long as you don't very early in the game. If you can, like, say for example, against a Nami, bait mana out to, say, get the Nami to use W on you, you go away to heal quickly, come back in, you will have mitigated about 75% of that damage, and she would have lost like a lot of mana for that. So the fact that you can keep doing that, as long as you play it smart in that sense, very early in the laning phase, you can get a lot of mana's worth out of your health pool. Sure, they get GP5 whenever. It gets you through that early laning phase, which is the hardest part of Pyke, for sure. Those first couple of levels can be very, very tricky, because Pyke does no damage, he does CC, but like if you go all in with your E, then you're there, and you have to flash out. So he isn't directly the best laning early, which is basically what I'm prioritizing here in this lineup. However, he is able to self-sustain through a lot, so much that losing a health potion really isn't that big of a deal. Also, he is definitely by far the best support roamer in the entire game, and if you can be really good at roaming, whether it is on any champion with mobility boots, you will go far and climb very fast, to be honest. Like if you make roaming your primary goal as a support, always looking at avenues when you can gank mid, or when you can work with your junglers to invade, or when having to ditch your AD carry so you focus on another lane to get ahead. The quicker you learn to do that, the quicker that you can essentially cheese your way up to a high ELO. It's one of the hardest things to learn as support, yet one of the most rewarding, and a lot of people don't ever do it. It's just why they find it hard to climb up. But if you can get really good and consistent with roaming, you will climb a significant amount fairly quickly in like a short burst. So you go up like a couple of ranks pretty quickly. But it always is high risk, high reward, but you can mitigate that risk by knowing what to do and when to do it. And hopefully my videos have been helping you teach, how to do that. But always the main thing is practice roaming, and get used to learning to ditch your AD carry, and taking some flack from your AD carry for when you do that, because you will get flamed ditching your AD carry, even if it's for 2 minutes. Most people can't help themselves but to do question mark pings at the very least, or spam ping you, or if you're extra lucky, then you get the good old flamerino. But sometimes it's worth knowing when to leave you alone. Hopefully, this tier list has given you an indication of what kind of champions are pretty strong this patch. Once again, this is only my opinion, my recommendation, from what I feel as a Diamond / Master support player on 2 different servers on Europe, to give you an indication of what to play. Sure, if you one trick or 2 tricks on one of the other champions in A or B, you can do it. It's just going to be harder for sure. If you're one trick Nami, for example, you're going to have a lot easier time than someone who one tricks Karma, for example. She's just stronger. She is the strongest support right now, I feel, in the game. Not by like a considerable margin compared to the other like top champions in the top 2, but I think because of the Holy Grail and self-sustain and how much lane control and how much you can do in team fights as well, and peeling and healing and keeping people up. And G is my top tip for patch 8.15. If you like the video, feel free to subscribe and give a thumbs up. Give a comment if you think I've completely botched up this tier list, or you think it's pretty much spot on. That'd be really helpful to help ensure that the consistency happens between patch notes to patch notes. And yeah, I really hope that this content helps you guys out. I'm keeping up with the track with one support gameplay video, at least from my stream, per day. I would like to have these sort of like unique YouTube only videos a little bit more consistent. I'm doing my best, keeping doing all the YouTube editing and rendering and things like that is a tough job on itself. But I do want to get some more like offline content for YouTube. I would really like that a lot. Feel free to join Discord as well. We've got a nice community over there, largely support community, but there's a couple of scoundrel AD carriers and mid laners and junglers and even the odd top laner in our channel. So feel free to join and meet the community. All the links to all my Twitch and Twitter and Discord are all in the dibbly-doo description underneath the stream. And hopefully I shall see you very soon. Goodbye.